It's Kara Nasardi from the EMDR Education and Training Center, and we're doing a three-part series on target lists, treatment plans, and the three-pronged protocol to help you learn how to coordinate them together. Because one of the things that I found in my own personal experience and then as an EMDR trainer is that this piece of taking a history and then organizing the client's symptoms, past experiences into a target list and a treatment plan is really one of the most challenging elements of becoming a new EMDR therapist. So we're going to do this as a three-part series. So today we're just looking at symptom-informed target lists. So part one today is target lists. And we're going to look at, to begin, the symptom history connection, because that's really where you want to begin. The very first, or one of the very first questions I ask a new client is, why therapy now? I want to understand what they're coming to therapy with symptomatically, because that's really going to guide our work. And so to do that, I ask a few questions. You know, what's going on? What do you want more of and what do you want less of in your life? And so they would tell me things like behaviors, somatic experiences, emotions, phobias, urges, whatever that is, right? So for each one of those, I'm going to ask, when did that symptom begin? So say a client comes in and says, I walk around feeling very anxious in social settings as one of the things that's a goal of therapy. I'd like to be able to feel comfortable in social settings. So I'm going to ask, when did that symptom begin? What was going on in your life at that time that the symptom began? And how has the symptom evolved, gotten better or worse over time? This is going to give me a lot of good information about their history as well. This is a really wonderful, these questions form a launching part for history taking. And what current experiences trigger this symptom? So that's going to give me a lot of information, not just about symptom and history connection, but also the connection to current symptoms. And one of the things I like to help clients understand when they start, they sometimes are confused about why I'm asking about when their anxiety began or what are the things that make it better or worse. And I'm trying to get them to go back to the earliest time when they had this experience. As I often tell them, you know, nobody is born believing, say, for example, they're not good enough, or nobody is born with social anxiety. We have to learn it somewhere along the way. So let's research and play detective and go back to the earliest time you remember believing that you weren't good enough, or the earliest time you remember feeling anxious in public. So let's use an example. Let's look at an example of a client with the following symptoms: social anxiety, feelings of worthlessness, and the negative belief I'm not good enough, fear of authority figures, and a phobia of dogs. So for each of those symptoms, I'm going to ask the previous questions, right? When did it begin? How has it changed? What triggers it? And I'm going to take that information and begin to cluster this client's symptoms. All of these symptoms that we showed here, these 4 symptoms, may belong to one target list in one cluster. But as you'll see in this example, sometimes they belong to more than one. And so when I asked those questions that I showed you before to this client, I learned that he had a verbally and physically abusive father, that in middle school, he was pervasively bullied and pretty intensely bullied by other kids. And as an adult, he was passed over for many promotions because of his feelings of worthlessness and lack of confidence and fear of male authority figures. He wouldn't kind of launch himself into these new promotion roles. So he's kind of staying flat in his job. And so given that, after asking those questions about the first 3 symptoms, I start to hypothesize that symptoms 1 through 3 belong to the same cluster. And this cluster is going to form our first target list of worthlessness. And so I go ahead and, taking my history, the first experience this client has is remembering his father spanking him in public for wetting his pants at age 3. At age 5, he had an experience of being left on his own in kindergarten, feeling anxious. At age 9, Little League tryouts where his father screams at him in the car and hits him when he gets home. Age 13, he was bullied on the school playground. And even though it's no longer related to dad, this client's internal experience is very similar, right? That feeling like there's something wrong with me and I'm not good enough and feeling afraid. At age 17, there was a particularly bad incident when dad gets drunk and gives the client a black eye. That's his worst memory. And then he, at age 24, which is recent, can't apply for a good job. He takes a lesser one instead because of feelings of lack of self-confidence. And then finally, at age 26, he tried to ask for a raise by his boss, but he reports chickening out. He didn't feel he was good enough, and he was afraid of what his boss would say. And then he was passed up for promotion most recently because he didn't step up, and that's his most recent memory. So we've got a list now of client memories, past memories that relate to those first 3 symptoms that are all one cluster. Now those are going to travel together. And so that's the past. And we also want to look at the current triggers related to this first cluster. So this client avoids social gatherings with unfamiliar people. He does not like and feels very triggered when seeing groups of teenagers, especially males, together in public. He gets extremely anxious and triggered when he has to present at meetings, especially to top-level colleagues, and when he has to speak to his boss one-on-one or in a group, and when thinking about applying for a promotion or a better job. So these are right now, before we've done any of the past work, we're at least taking a snapshot of his current triggers. But then we have to remember the client had a 4th symptom that he came with, which was a dog phobia. And that had nothing to do with this other cluster. It's its own cluster. This had to do with an incident that happened when he was a child. So I asked those questions again. When did this first happen? How has it gotten better? How has it gotten worse? How does it present itself now? I asked those initial questions and learned that at 5, he was bitten by a neighbor's dog at a birthday party, and he didn't see it coming. He got blindsided by this. At 10, he was chased by a dog in a park. That's his worst memory. At 11, there were dogs running off leash at a campground. It felt very out of control, and he felt unsafe. At 17, a backyard neighbor's dog was snarling through the fence, also felt unsafe. And he slept over, or his girlfriend brought her dog to a sleepover at his house, and he didn't sleep at all. He believes that the dog hates him, and he felt a lot of fear and confusion. And that also, he felt blindsided at that one because he didn't know she was bringing the dog over, which was very similar to his 5-year-old experience. And he was later, a German Shepherd jumped up on him. Didn't hurt him, but jumped up on him in a greeting, and it kind of came out of the blue again, and he felt out of control and unsafe. So these memories, these past experiences are all related to the dog phobia. And we also want to check for current triggers around that. Hearing dogs bark, especially if he cannot see the dog. Seeing unfamiliar dogs in public, especially big ones. When his girlfriend brings her dog over, and anytime dogs are running around off leash, that's a trigger for him. So we have now 2 different target lists and target clusters for this client. We've got the worthlessness ones, and we've got the dog phobia, but and this will often happen when you're taking a symptom list and a history with a client. We'll end up with more than one cluster, more than one target list. And we have to understand that while these target lists are separate, these clusters are separate, they are not equal. And what we're going to do in the next installation of this series is to look at how to determine your treatment plan. Now that you've organized your target list, how are you going to determine where to go next? And so we'll come back to you with that in a couple weeks. Please do get in touch. Here's some ways to get in touch with us. You can find us online or email us directly. We look forward to hearing from you and hope that this series was and continues to be helpful to your work. Thank you.